what is worse, criticising someone's race or criticising someone's religion? Is one worse than the other? Are they on a par? Because those have been the big two stories this week. One about race, one about religion. So is it worse to criticise someone's religion? Is it worse to criticise someone's race? And secondly, following on from his apology, let's drill down into that, shall we? Because he's saying he's definitely not a racist. It was a fit of temper. So can you use racist language but not be racist? 0344 499 1000. Give me a call and tell me what is worse, slagging off someone's race or slagging off someone's religion. Are they on a par? Is one worse than the other? Are they both as equally abhorrent? And as I said, and also your reaction as well, do you think that it is fair and reasonable of the European Court of Human Rights to uphold this idea that this woman was not within the law by making these assertions about Islam? And, as I said, do you think that you can be a non-racist but use racist language? I mean, I'll tell you my opinion on that. No. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. I'm not a racist, but I'm just going to call someone the most horrific racist names. Those names would not be at the tip of your tongue if you weren't racist, would they? Or would they? Am I being a bit harsh? Because what I'll say about myself, and again, it's all very subjective, but, you know, like, for instance, I like to think, because you know my weight, I mean, my God, I yo-yo, my weight goes up and down like a tart's drawers. It's unbelievable where I am with my weight. So I have a lot of sympathy with those people who struggle with whether their weight is going up or down, right? Okay. But that still doesn't stop me. You know, like when I'm driving, for instance, and someone pulls out in front of me and I get really angry immediately, you know, I will find myself going, oh, you stupid, fat, whatever. Now, I'm not someone... I have sympathy for people who have weight struggles, but sometimes when you lose your temper, you do just grab onto the first attribute of someone that you can grab hold of because you're angry. So I'm not in any way justifying the absolutely disgusting way in which he spoke, but I'm just wondering, is it okay to sort of grab on someone's first trait if you're so angry? Let's talk to Vernon, who's in Worcester. Morning to you, Vernon.
Morning.
How are you? I'm all right. How are you?
Living the dream, driving on the M42 at 5 a.m. It's perfect. Yeah,
oh, I bet it is, actually. So tell me, firstly, what's worse, criticising someone's race or criticising someone's religion? Is one worse than the other? Are they the same? What do you say?
For me, there are two different things here. If we take them side by side, as first of all, that vile little man that was on Ryanair has no place in society, temper or no temper. I don't think that he's got a bad temper. He obviously has got a bad temper, but he is a grade A racist. Fact. You don't say those things. I mean, you know, if I'm upset with someone, I'm not going to come out and abuse someone with that. I mean, how dare he? We're all the same, whether we're yellow, green, pink, or blue. And as for the other subjects, you know, take away the religion. The simple facts are that being involved with a 6-year-old is perverse, wrong, and should never take place again in a civilized society.
Well, this is the idea. This is the idea, Vernon, that, let me just explain to anyone who doesn't understand, because we didn't get to that bit, but the woman who's been named as Mrs. S from Vienna, she was said to have held 2 seminars. I thought there was something online about this as well, but she held 2 seminars in which she discussed the apparent marriage between the Prophet Muhammed and a 6-year-old girl. Now, before we go on, I would like to just say that if anyone who is from the Islamic faith wants to ring up and sort of clarify whether that is the case, whether this is an interpretation, whether that is actually what happened, or whether it's sort of part of the story. Because I can't lie, I am not someone who considers themselves a scholar on Islam. I'd be more than happy to hear from you, because I think it's important that we get that insight. But Vernon, it's almost, to me, it doesn't matter whether this is about, I mean, obviously, you know, we all find paedophilia abhorrent, but to me, like, this question is not about whether Muhammad was or was not a paedophile. To me, this is a question of the fact that she should be allowed to say anything about Muhammad. She should be able to say, if she wanted to, that Muhammad was married to a kangaroo. She should be able to say that, as far as she's concerned, Muhammad is the worst thing that she's ever heard in her life. She should be able to you know, I would go one step further, and I would say if she wants to draw a big cartoon of Muhammad and stick it up in her seminar, she should be able to, because for me, like, a religion, every religion, whether it be Islam, whether it be Christianity, whatever it may be, you should be able to parody, mock, criticise, and say anything you like for it. And the fact that the European Court of Human Rights has said that she's not allowed to, for me, is an absolute travesty of free speech.
Agreed, 100%. This is one of the reasons why, it's another example of why we, the people of Great Britain, voted to leave the EU. You need. I know the ladies overseas. I understand that. By the same token, everything is fine until you bring religion into it, and it's just the facts are, Muhammad, yes, he is whatever, the leader of the Islamic faith, but as a person, he's a human being, and a human being who's an adult should not be with a 6-year-old, regardless.
Well, and if that is what the story says, and if that happened, as we said, in real life, then agreed. But again, my point is that whether he was or he wasn't, yes, I should be able to say that if I want to. I should be able to say Jesus is a paedophile. I should be able to say that any religious figure, I should be able to say that Mary wasn't a virgin, and probably that half the fellas in Bethlehem. I should be able to say anything like that. Now, it might offend people, but the point is, I don't think religion and race are on a par. It's similar to a conversation we had a few weeks ago regarding sexuality as well, because one is a choice and one isn't. Now, I could stand there and point at someone's race and say, I dislike the fact you're black. That would make me a horrific racist. But if I stand and point at someone and say, I don't like the fact you're Christian, then that is my right, because, well, that's how I see it. I wouldn't do that because it's hateful. But I should be able to stand and say to someone, I dislike the fact you're Christian, and that not be seen as a crime, because Christianity, the following of Islam, the following of any religion, is a belief. It's a choice, and choices and beliefs are up for debate and criticism. Whereas a race isn't. A race is not a belief.
No, you're quite correct. The only thing is that with freedom of speech, you should always remember respect. Respect for the other person. Make your opinion, make it in a factual way, make it in a pleasant way. Do not make it in a nasty way. And always show elements of respect.
Yes and no. I mean, again, I kind of agree with that, in as much as if I were having a public discourse about religion, then yes, you have to, I think it's important to precursor it, saying, look, you know, if you want to follow your faith, all power to you, don't let that interfere with someone else's life. However, you know, there's not much respect when it comes to the mocking of religion. You know, Life of Brian is not very respectful. Jerry Springer the Opera is not very respectful. Cartoons of the Prophet Muhammed that might be done for comic reasons aren't very respectful.
I'm talking on an individual level, yes?
Okay, fine.
You can't, you know, I'm on about me to you, you to him to somebody else. Yeah, always have an opinion. This is what's brilliant about this country. It's called freedom of speech. But it's quite an interesting phase we're going through at the moment. You've had an individual called Tommy Robinson that obviously did something very wrong. But then you've had the elite within Westminster that used parliamentary, laws, as it were, to reveal who was the person behind the gagging order.
Right.
I don't agree with either, to be honest. I don't agree with either.
Well, I agree with one and not the other, because I think that we elect our MPs to make that judgment, or the House of Lords as well. We elect our MPs to choose who is in the House of Lords to make that judgment. And you're right, you're right. I think you have the right to have the opinion that it is wrong to name someone that's involved in that using parliamentary privilege if you so desire. But I don't think it's right that someone like Tommy Robinson... well, look, let's not get into that because, Tommy Robinson's got to get back to court for it. And to be quite honest, I don't think I want to have that conversation as well. And it's now going to the Attorney General, that case as well. Interesting points about free speech, though, there from Vernon. Let's now talk to Johnny, who's in Manchester. Morning, Johnny.
Hiya, morning. Yeah, I just want to throw something in. I don't know whether this will work in with what we're saying. White British man that's lived in the Philippines for 25 years. And I had racism in the Philippines. I had a pig farm. And I was beaten down, and my business was beaten down by Filipinos. And I was run out of town by Filipinos at the time. So it works all over the world, doesn't it? We talk about here in the UK. I'm a white man in a foreign country. So,
But were there laws in place in the Philippines to protect you? Did you feel that those laws work for you?
No. Hey, bloody hell, I wish.
And I think it's an important point to make that racism works both ways. But what do you...
Course, I was in love with the Philippines, and I was in love with the Filipino lady, and I was in love with the islands, and it was all good for me, it all worked when it worked for them initially, setting up a business and making a pig farm, and everyone's making money, and then they shut you down and close you down.
So what do you and what has that done for your opinion of what's happened here in the UK with the Ryanair passenger? Because he's claiming he's not a racist, he just lost his temper. What do you say to that?
Well, it's just a rude, old, obnoxious, arrogant man, isn't he?
And do you think that he can be... do you think he can be not racist but use that kind of language?
Absolutely not.
You are, aren't you? There's no excuse. You are completely racist if you reach for that.
I've spent 30 years travelling the world. I don't see colour, creed, or anything. I think I'm pleasant. I might be abrupt with people, and I'll be abrupt whether you're black, white, or brown, or whatever. I might be the biggest arse in the world, excuse my French. But colour, creed, or, and I was married in India. I've been all over the world.
Johnny, do you know what? It sounds like you hate everyone equally. Oh, what a lovely...
No, I don't hate
No,
anybody.
I'm joking with you, Johnny, but I know what you're saying, that to you, the race doesn't come into it. If you're abrupt with someone, if you get annoyed with someone, it's because based on their merits rather than anything else. And quite right too. Finally, then, what about religion? What about this idea that because we agree it's abhorrent to criticise someone's race, but what about criticising an aspect of someone's religion?
As regards religion, again, if you're Muslim or you're Hindu or you're Buddhist or whatever, I can't. Religion for me personally doesn't come into anything.
But should you be able to criticise someone's religion? Or criticise aspects of it? And should it be...
Well, I'm sure people will. And people do, don't they? Obviously, people do criticise people's religion, but that's their choice, not mine.
All right, okay, Johnny, thank you. That's Johnny in Manchester. So do you think it is the same? Is it better? Is it worse to criticise someone's race or their religion? Should courts get involved when you criticise someone's race? I mean, I know in the Equalities Act you can't discriminate against someone's religion. I find that a little troubling, just because one is a choice and one isn't. But I'd like to know where you stand on this, and I'd like to know where you stand on this absolutely sort of absurd assertion, really, that you can use racist language but not be a racist. To me, the gentleman involved in this incident, he doesn't sound like he's perhaps the full penny, shall we say. Again, really not trying to justify any of it, but he doesn't quite sound like he's the full penny. Let's talk to Andy, who's in Portsmouth. Morning to you, Andy.
Yeah, good morning, Cristo. Thanks for having me on. Cristo, look, race, religion. One's a protected characteristic and the other one is a choice. Now, look, protected characteristic, I don't, if we start criticising protected characteristics, we're literally going to lose our moral guidance and compass as we were. But in terms of the choice, absolutely we should be able to criticise it. What I don't like is the freedom of speech being curtailed to the point that if we stop criticising something which is a choice, it's boundless, there is no ends.
Well, absolutely. We'll end up in the realms where politics, you could end up with a situation where a government comes in and then they say, well, sorry, we're going to make it illegal to criticise us. We're in very, very dodgy ground. However, there are going to be people of religious faith listening to what you just said who will think that, no, if it's offensive, if saying that Muhammad is a paedophile, if saying that, Mary was not the virgin when in the Christian faith, that's going to be very, very offensive to some people. Surely they deserve protection.
Well, you're quite right. But the point is, when a body or a large body of or an organisation tries to stem the criticism, it means, I've always believed, it means that they've got something that they inherently know within their moral boundaries that they're doing that it doesn't quite float. It's not quite correct. Now, look, let me give you an example. Take FGM, for example. Now, if you stripped the religion away from that, forget the religion, just imagine FGM taking place. If it was taking place, say, in a house where there were a couple of normal white Christians there, not particularly religious, but they did FGM because they thought, no, this is a good idea, I can see that mother and father going to prison for 25 years. I absolutely can. Because if you take it for what it is, it's a terrible thing. I don't know a lot about it, but it seems to be a terrible thing to me.
I mean, could you say the same then about, because although one is slightly more brutal than the other, the principle is the same. I feel quite the same about male circumcision. I mean, again, if you were to suddenly say in 2018 as a new idea, we are going to essentially mutilate the sexual organs of a newborn baby boy, people would be utterly horrified. They would be disgusted. They would think it's absolutely outrageously terrible. But because it's got this religious aspect, which is indeed, again, a choice, it is seen as in some way acceptable. And to me, it's absolutely barbaric. I cannot believe that either practice takes place in civilized societies as a result of people believing in what I see as fairy stories. It's to me, and to be able and to think that it's acceptable to hurt a child as a result of that. But there are going to be people listening who are going to be offended by exactly what we are saying. So, on that note, Andy, because the 2010 Equalities Act states in law that religion, it's race, gender, sexuality and religion, those four traits are protected in the 2010 Equalities Act. Are you saying that you believe that perhaps religion shouldn't have those same protections?
I'm saying that anything that's a choice, that is a choice, not a protected characteristic, you should be very, very careful before you put a protectorate on it, because what you've actually done is you've shut the channel for criticism to be able to happen. So,
no, I get your point. I think anyone listening will get your point, because, you know, if something is a choice, you can't choose your religion. You can't choose. You can't choose your race. You can't choose your sexuality. You can't choose the gender that you identify. You can't choose any of that stuff. You can choose a religion. I mean, that's the logic that I live by. Indeed, if you disagree with that, if you disagree with Andy, if you agree with this idea put forward by the European Court of Human Rights, that actually criticising the religion of Islam to the point where you associate Muhammad with paedophilia, if you agree that it's absolutely acceptable that that kind of speech should not be made, especially in public, then call and tell me why. I would really like to hear from you, especially if you're someone of the Islamic faith. But to me, this isn't about the intricacies of the Islamic faith. To me, this is just about free speech, criticising religion. I kind of don't really want to have a debate about what Muhammad might have been or might not have been, because to me that's almost inconsequential to the point. 0344 499 1000. Elizabeth Bates, Politics Home, senior political reporter. Morning.
Good morning.
So you've been listening away to the debates that we've been having this morning on this. You just heard Andy's call. So we've had two really big stories this week. Well, one bigger than the other, really. The Ryanair race row scandal and this idea by the European Court of Human Rights that a woman shouldn't be able to make this, or anyone shouldn't be able to make these assertions about the Prophet Muhammad. So essentially, the outrage about both and the rule of law on both seems to be quite similar. Criticising someone's race, criticising someone's religion. Should they be seen in a similar light?
Well, I was sort of listening to the conversation that you were having there, and I'm afraid me and you are not going to have a vigorous debate on this morning, because I tend to agree with you on both of those things. I think I was probably in the same position as everybody else when I saw that Ryanair video, and we see those videos come out a lot now on social media, and I actually think it's a good thing that we get to see those exchanges, because sometimes when you're sitting on an aeroplane or in a situation like that, you don't feel like you're able to speak out. When you can release that video, then it gives people the chance on social media to say that that kind of behaviour is unacceptable, and I think that's important.
But do you think people should have spoken out? Because there was one gentleman, I think, sat behind who kind of tried to separate them, and you did hear a few people on the plane going, "Oh no, that's unacceptable," but there wasn't really anyone other than the person filming who seemed to be very vocal, going, "Oi!"
Yeah.
You know, shut up, you, and saying to the steward or stewardess, move him, don't move her. Afterwards, the steward went up and asked him if he was okay.
and I think the two things that you raised there are important. I think that hopefully these videos coming out will encourage people to stand up for other people in public, and I think that's really important, because that woman felt very isolated, within that video, even though there were people speaking up for her. But I think it's important that, we stand up for what we believe in public, particularly in the political times that we live in the moment. I also think that when it comes to him saying that, he's not really a racist person, it was just a fit of temper, I don't really agree with that, but I do have a lot of time for people that are prepared to come out after something like that has happened. He's been publicly shamed, publicly humiliated, and rightly so, because he was completely in the wrong. But for him to come out and say, I was wrong, I have a lot of time for that.
And I suppose, again, I just want to be balanced. I don't want to justify it, and I think we're in the realms of doing so, because I've seen a lot on social media by people saying, well, look, clearly, in their opinion, and when you look at the way he's talking, etc., perhaps he's challenged in certain ways, shall we say. Perhaps, a lot of people are making an association with mental illness. I don't know that. Mm-hmm. He's not here to defend himself on that. to me, there does seem to be perhaps something there that is not...
He looked like he was sort of struggling socially.
Yeah, and certainly during the interview as well, he didn't seem... I'm not making any excuse, but I think that perhaps if he has come out and made that apology, and perhaps if that is into consideration, you're right, as abhorrent as it is, it's probably right to draw a line under it. But do you think, bearing that in mind, and I keep using this sort of example of fatism, I don't know whether you heard me talking about this earlier, but, you know, I've struggled massively with my weight in my life and gone up and down and all of these sorts of things. And so I like to think I've got a lot of sympathy for people who've struggled with their weight. Having said that, when I've been driving and someone's pulled out on me and they happen to be fat, for instance, I found myself going, oh, you stupid fat whatever. And, you know, I'm not... do you know what I mean? I have sympathy for fat people, but sometimes when you lose your temper, you sort of reach for the first trait that you've got, that someone's got. Sometimes, you know, I produce Loose Women, for goodness sake. I'm massively into women being on the television, being absolutely equal. I think in many cases women sort of excel over men, and so they should. You know, I'm really into that, but I will say, oh, you stupid woman, you know. And so is there ever sort of that justification by going that sometimes you reach for the first insult that comes into your mind, which might be about a physical trait that normally you would never dream of saying, but when you are absolutely furious, it's just the first thing you can reach for?
You know, I think there is, and I'm in the same boat as you. I don't want to in any way excuse this man's behaviour, but I think there's always room for empathy and kindness, because as you say, we are all human beings and we're flawed and we often say the wrong thing, and sometimes, you know, so it's, I don't know how many times in my life I've woken up in the morning after a night out and thought, why did I say that?
Yeah.
I don't think that, I don't believe that. And so, you know, this man was very angry or whatever. No excuse for it, but I do think there's definitely room for us to forgive people, especially when they say that they're sorry.
And when they're contrite and when they say, yeah, exactly, that they are sorry. I don't know whether I would go so far as to kind of say I'm not a racist, but I think the fact that he held up his hands is something to be admired.
Absolutely.
But let's just reiterate, I don't think that's an excuse for someone going forward to say, well, I'm going to be horrifically racially abusive, and tomorrow I can apologise and all is well.
Yeah.
What's worse, criticising race or criticising religion? We haven't got onto the religious side of things, but we will do. And, of course, we've got lots more other stories from the newspapers as well. All of that's coming up. It's Cristo on Talk Radio, 0344 499 1000. If you'd like to join the conversation this morning, the time is just approaching 6:20.
Talk Radio.